I'm in Arlington, Virginia. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me for an hour tonight. Free GMAT prep hour. I've been doing a couple of these in the last year. I don't know if any of you have been to any of these sessions, but it's a cool resource for you if you're just getting started with your studying, if you are kind of gearing up for exam day in the next few weeks. So thanks for hanging out. Couple other just reminders for you guys. We have additional prep options for free as well. So you are welcome to come view a sample trial class for free. If you can't tell, I'm kind of just stalling here because my PowerPoint presentation has stopped cooperating with me. Let's try to get this thing back and rolling. Here we go. Okay, so you have a couple other free options here. You're welcome to come into a live GMAT class, one of our session ones of our 9-session course, and just kind of feel it out, see if you find it valuable. Just sign up at this link down here, manhattanprep.com/GMAT/resources, and you can just sign up for a trial class. You can do this for an in-person class if you live in a city where we have courses, or you can also sign up for a trial online class since we offer lots of classes online. We've also got kind of study yourself options, our on-demand courses that are interactive, so kind of go at your own pace. So lots of options for you to check out. We also have a bunch of really good blog posts and stuff we produce online that is free. If you're kind of looking to study up on random concepts, general study skills, looking to see what the GMAT is all about, I would encourage you to go check out our blogs and do some reading. Interesting articles. I learn a lot when I peruse those articles myself. So, you know, every few weeks we offer one of these free GMAT prep hours online, and the topics vary. They could be very specific, they could be very broad. And today I'm kind of going the more broad route, though we will use some problems to talk about the concept today. But I want to talk to you about reviewing your work and in general just kind of getting more out of your studying, right? How can you get the most out of your studying? Talk to a lot of students who, you know, put in the hours and then don't feel like they're getting anywhere when they're studying. Not really making lots of gains in terms of content and also in terms of score movement. So one of the remedies that I think plays a huge role in this is going to be getting better at reviewing your work. So let's just kind of suppose you have an hour to study and you have your trusty official guide, whether it's the 2018 one, the new 2019 one, an older one, all good. You've got an hour and your official guide. Think about what you're going to do with that 1 hour, right? How are you going to organize your study time? And you can type it in the chat. And if you're watching on YouTube, just kind of consider how you spend an hour studying with your official guide. I'll tell you a way not to study, right? Maybe the best way to describe how to study is to describe all the ways how not to. One way not to study is to just open up the book and cram through 30 problems, right? You think about the math, the quant section on the GMAT, you're supposed to average 2 minutes per question. Well, an hour gives me time for 30 questions. So you run through 30 questions and you see how many you got right. You got 19 out of 30, okay, not bad. Could be better, could be worse. But then what have you learned in that hour? That, you know, you are getting 63% of the questions right? I'm not sure how valuable that is. So I want to talk to you about ways to restructure your study time, and in particular, reviewing your work with a little more detail. So here's what I would suggest you do if you were given an hour, okay? And of course, there's not just one way to do it, but here's one way you could do it, okay? Let's take the first 30 minutes or so for Quant. And maybe you carve out the Quant time like this. Let's select 4 random Quant questions, and you do them timed. That is, you do them in a total of 8 minutes. Force yourself to finish the 4 problems in those 8 minutes, okay? No saying, oh, well, this isn't for real. I'm just kind of practicing on my own. I've got loads and loads of time. No, your goal is to be done with those 4 questions as best you can when the timer, the 8-minute timer, runs out. Okay, then what do you do? Well, I would say at this point, don't be in a hurry to go check out the answers, okay? Once you've finished those 4 problems in 8 minutes, you're not really finished. Maybe there's a question or 2 that you had to rush on in order to finish on time, okay? Consider going back and giving yourself more time, unlimited time, on those questions that you found challenging. So after you do that, before looking, oh my gosh, I'm struggling here, looking at the answers, revisit any problems that you, say, rushed through. Give yourself unlimited time. Okay, and maybe, you know, you spend an extra 5 minutes on a problem, an extra 10 minutes really wrestling with a problem to arrive at a satisfactory solution. Okay. Then, once you've spent that extra time on those problems, then go check the answers. But only the answers, right? Only the 5-letter solutions, A, B, C, D, and E, okay? So you're going to avoid checking kind of the step-by-step solutions for how the book or how the experts solve the problem, okay? So we're going to check only the answers, not the solutions. If you missed any, now that you know the answer, go back and see if you can correct yourself. If you can't do that, if you can't figure out how the book gets its answer and you keep getting a different answer, then take a look at the solution line by line, right? Just take a look at one line at a time, try to get a hint as to how to go through the problem with this one little hint in mind, and see how can you unlock the solution with as minimal help as possible, okay? All right, once you've done that for your 4 quant questions, before you spend the next 30 minutes on verbal, I want you to spend time updating your error log. Okay, so a little bit of time talking about the error log today. I've got a sample up here, and we'll talk to you how to set one up and how to fill it out. So then visit your error log. All right. So the error log is going to be the document that you use to capture all of the lessons that you've learned the hard way on the GMAT, okay? So let's go ahead and bring up a different document, and I'll show you what a nice error log looks like, okay? And it looks something like this, right? Just a spreadsheet that has a handful of columns and organized something like this, right? The problem that you missed and the source that it comes from. So maybe it's from Official Guide 2018 and it's problem number 230, right? The last problem solving question in the book. And the topic is exponents, okay? And if you get a problem wrong on the Official Guide question list, on a practice exam or kind of any other problem source that seems, you know, pretty legitimate, okay? Those are great problems to add to your error log, okay? The key columns to this are going to be these next two that I'm going to talk about. Why I got this problem wrong, okay? And then the next big column, why I'll get this problem or another problem like it correct in the future. And this is going to be the column where you have your kind of big lesson that you learned. Okay. Now, what you don't want to write in these columns is something like this. I made a careless mistake. And the reason you'll get a problem like this right in the future is I'll be more careful. No. We don't want to write things like that in these columns because, well, then you'll just have columns full of that information. You'll just say, oh, I made so many careless mistakes when I was studying, and I'll just try harder. I'll pay more attention on the real thing. And we've all said that and not really made any headway in that area. So I want you to be specific. I want you to be honest with yourself. All right, this is a private document for you. You know, why did you get it wrong? Oh, maybe I didn't know how to handle all of the negative exponents on the left side of the equation. Okay, and why you'll get it right in the future, well, that'll be something kind of depends on what you've actually learned here. So we're going to practice filling this error log out as we go today. All right, I've got some questions for us. We're going to get some of them wrong. That's cool. And we'll use this template as a way to practice completing some error log rows and columns in here. Okay, so back to PowerPoint, okay? After you spend 30 minutes with Quant, maybe then you consider spending 30 minutes with verbal, okay? Let's mix it up a little bit. And a great way to do, 30 minutes of verbal is something like give yourself 8 minutes for 3 sentence correction questions and 2 critical reasoning questions, right? We say critical reasoning, you want to average about 2 minutes per question, and sentence correction, you want to average about 80 seconds per question. And so that totals to another 8 minutes, okay? Then we'll do the same thing. You know, you'll check your, you'll go back and see if there were any questions you felt rushed on, give them some more time to think it out off the clock, go take a look at the answer key, see if you got them right, them wrong. If you missed some, can you figure out why the correct answer is indeed right? And if not, then we'll take a look. Only then will we take a look at the actual answer explanations, okay? And I would say half an hour for, 4 or 5 quant problems is about right, okay? Yes, I know normally when you're in the exam, half an hour, you want to allot yourself half an hour for 15 questions. We are doing something similar to that. We are giving ourselves the time set at the beginning. But I'm going to say it, and you'll probably hear it from other GMAT instructors, that reviewing your work is probably more important, not probably, definitely more important, more valuable than just slamming through problem after problem after problem. Okay? There's a handful of other resources that talk about this, a couple other articles on our blog by Reed Arnold and Elaine Lowe talk about similar things. So redoing GMAT problems and the kind of the value of an error log. So you can just Google search those titles, they'll pop right up. I'd recommend reading those. If it's your first day studying the GMAT, absolutely. And if it's, you've been doing this for a couple months, I'd imagine that you can still get more out of your review process. So, all right, what I've got planned is I've got a couple of sentence correction questions, all right, that we're going to look at. And then after that, I've got a set of 3 quant questions too. And we're going to use these as opportunities to practice questions on the clock, okay? So I'm going to give you 80 seconds for this coming sentence correction question. We're going to make our answer choice in those 80 seconds. And then we're going to talk about reviewing the problem, best like ways at getting better at sentence correction, and we're going to consult with our error log as well. All right, so let me just check to see if there's any questions coming in. Feel free to type in your questions in the chat room or in the Q&A, and I'll see if I can carve out some time to address those. But for now, let's take a look at the following sentence correction question. Okay, I'm going to give you 80 seconds to think through this. If this is your first day with the GMAT, all you're trying to do is figure out which of these 5 answer choices best replaces the underlined portion in the sentence at the top. You've got 80 seconds. Another 20 seconds. Don't type in your answer. I will put up a poll for you to poll in. All right, force yourself to choose an answer. Poll in for me with the answer choice that you like here. I've almost got everyone's vote. Come on, there's a couple more of you out there. Got to pull in, got to pull in. All right, well, maybe I'll assume someone's on their phone or went for a walk. There we go. All right. I have shared the results of the poll. Okay, so good news, no one liked D, and answer D is not correct, so good stuff. But there's going to be some opportunity to add stuff in the error log here, all right? So we've got 2 for A, 3 for B, 5 for C, and 3 for E. 2, 3, 5, 0, 3. All right, so maybe I can just kind of jot that in over here. So this one had 2. This one had 3, this one had 5, 0, and 3. Okay, well, that looks horrible. Let's move those over a little bit. All right, so ways to get better at sentence correction, okay? It's good to get things right, but it's better to know 100% why you got a question right, okay? So don't settle for that sentence sounds the best, okay? Let's try to come up with actual reasons why the other 4 are wrong, okay? And not just that they don't sound as good, okay? But legitimate reasons, right? Provable reasons, reasons that you could use to teach. Okay, so go ahead and tell me in chat what the first kind of split, that is the difference in the answer choices you wanted to handle here was. I see some good ones. Can you let me know in chat? All right, so we've got a couple votes already for the subject verb, looks like split between have and has at the end. And I will tell you that I think subject verb is my favorite split to handle because I feel pretty good about subject verb most of the time. So let's take a look at have versus has first, and then I've got some other votes for that and those at the beginning. We'll handle that or those next. All right, so have versus has. How do I know what have led scholars or what has led scholars to think about the degree to which, etc.? Right? what is the subject that goes along with those verbs? All right, so I've got a couple votes for the differences, and that is indeed correct. Okay, how do I know that it's not the languages that have or the organization that has? Indeed, it is the differences, but how do you know it's not the languages or the organization? All right, so I've got one vote for the logic, right? It's the differences that has led scholars to think about, you know, the degree to which differences. Okay, good. So you want to think about meaning of sentences like all the time in sentence correction. So TC, I'd say that's a great idea, okay? But another reason why it can't be of the European languages is because languages is part of a prepositional phrase, and you will not see subject within prepositional phrases just about ever, okay? So languages is part of this prepositional phrase, which is a modifier, and modifiers just add extra detail to a sentence core. And so if the overall sentence core is the striking differences have done stuff, then you don't care about the extra stuff. So Maddie is absolutely right there, okay? Same thing with organization, because between is also a preposition, okay? So you will get rid of between the semantic organization, and that kind of rules out both of those other options for us. And so we're kind of just left with the differences. Okay. Good. All right. So if you chose answer B, D, or E, okay, this is a good takeaway for you. All right. You missed the subject-verb agreement between differences and have. All right, and if you thought it was organization has, a takeaway for you would be the subject of the sentence will not be within a prepositional phrase. And here is your prepositional phrase encompassing organization. Okay, so what we can do now is just go ahead and eliminate answers B, D, and E. And look, 3 of the 4 wrong answers are gone. Let's go handle that versus those. All right, time for another split. And we got 5 votes for C and only 2 for A. So can someone in chat explain to me A or C? Go to bat for your answer. Right, and if you're watching on YouTube, right, really consider the difference between that and those. Okay, that I guess is singular, those is plural. Well, how do I know? Do I want singular or do I want plural? Okay, so TC says he prefers that because it's a substitute, all right? It's one of these pronouns. It's what's called a demonstrative pronoun. And so it is used to substitute or replace another noun somewhere in the sentence. And TC is saying that that noun is semantic organization. But Maddie's chiming in that those is actually substituting for differences. And someone else is saying, isn't it just the languages, right? So it gets a little tricky. I understand how pronouns work. They replace a noun somewhere in the sentence, but which noun, right? So maybe it kind of comes down to logic again, right? Or maybe we can use another tool. So how do we know? Okay. Well, I think I'll use let's use a different tool. Okay, we've already kind of found the word between in here as having some role to play in encompassing the word organization, part of the prepositional phrase. But let's look at between as a marker for parallelism, okay? Typically, between functions like this, between this and that, between A and B, between X and Y, okay? And we want X and Y to be parallel to one another, right? We want those two elements to balance, okay? And so let's consider what is being balanced, right? X should be the semantic organization of Native American languages, right? That's X here. We have the word and connecting two elements, and then Y is this part. And you need those two to balance. So I need to balance the semantic organization of one language with the semantic organization of other languages. And so TC, you were correct. It should be that because it refers back to just the organization, all right? It's the organization in one set of languages and the organization in a different set of languages. And we're comparing those differences, okay? Yeah, so yeah, there were some other good comments in here. But before I get to the comma in versus comma which, let's just go ahead and mark answer C as incorrect. All right, so if you missed this because of answer C, you went with answer C, the difference between that and those, maybe your takeaway is spotting the parallelism marker between X and Y, and to make sure that these elements are balanced, right? The organization here and the organization over here. Okay. Jay had a good idea as well, and that was, you know what? If I don't know how to handle that versus those, let's handle another difference. The comma in the midst of these answer choices. Comma which versus comma in both. Oh, that was actually Brandon. Sorry, Brandon said that. What do we think? Do we like comma which? Well, I guess I've already told you that answer C is wrong, so we can't like comma which. Why is comma which wrong in answer C? Getting some different different suggestions here. Yeah, like comma which is what we call a noun modifier, and typically the way comma which works is it modifies a noun just prior. And the way this sentence reads, the languages are not the things that include grammar and vocabulary, right? What includes grammar and vocabulary? Well, I guess it could be the types of organization or the differences in grammar and vocabulary, but it's clearly not the languages that include grammar and vocabulary. And so comma which isn't really functioning the way we'd like it to function here. So, you know, oftentimes in sentence correction, there's more than one reason to eliminate a wrong answer. So you don't have to get hung up on that versus those if that's not clicking for you, okay? Go ahead and find some other difference in the question or in the answer choices and make a call on that other difference if one of them isn't working for you, okay? So lots of things to kind of take away from this one. General process, okay, or subject verb. So let's go ahead and fill out our error log entry. So here's what this would look like. So source, this will be free GMAT prep hour, question 1. And, you know, that's not an official source, but I'm just going to put it in here for right now. Striking, I guess it was question 1. Topic was sentence correction, and maybe for you, it was a subject-verb issue. Didn't understand, or I didn't align the verb with the correct subject, right? And why will you get this right in the future, right? Check, like when looking for the subject of a sentence, eliminate all modifiers to get to the sentence core, right? The sentence core is just the subject and the verb. And so important modifier type for us here, prepositional phrases, right? And so your takeaway maybe for this one is the subject. Sorry, I moved my keyboard here to make room for my drawing pad. It's messing me up. The subject of a sentence will not be in a prepositional phrase, right? And that's something you can learn. So whenever you are looking for the subject of a sentence, just double check. Hey, is this in a modifier? Is it within a prepositional phrase? And if it is, cross it off the list. It's not your subject, okay? Maybe another, reason you got this wrong is you got hung up on that versus those and didn't know how to proceed. And something that you can take away is don't need to get hung up on a single sentence correction split, okay? Look for other splits to handle, okay? Cool. All right, so we'll come back to that in a sec. The chat room is blowing up here. Sorry about that. Yeah, the answer to this one is A. The answer to this one is A. All right. Yeah, so just to double check, and if you missed this one because you liked comma which, oh, hold on one second. Stop share. I'm gonna bring the PowerPoint back up, forgetting that you can't see absolutely everything on my monitor. Yeah, so the answer to this one was A, and if you missed it because of comma which, right, maybe something to take away is how does comma which work, all right? Comma which connects what follows to the noun in front of it, all right? Or at least a noun very nearby in front of it, okay? I have a colleague who likes to refer to these as like comma which as a peanut butter word because it's sticky. It sticks the components that I'm highlighting here. It sticks what follows it to what came before it, right? European languages include grammar and vocabulary. That's not really what I want to say there. I would say European languages include German and French and Spanish and Italian, things like that, okay? Sorry. You guys are chatty. This is good. All right, good stuff. Let's move on to another one. All right, I've got another sentence correction question for us. So I'm going to put the timer back on. I'm going to give you 80 seconds, and we will give another one a try. Here it is. All right, get ready to Pick an answer because the poll's coming back. All right, let's poll in. That's 80 seconds. Poll in for me. Oh, come on. I've only got 60% of you polled in. We were better on question 1. Okay, most of us are polled in. It looks like not the majority, but the plurality of us like answer E. Okay, here are the results, so you can see it. Again, good job. Answer B is not right, so no one fell for that one. But again, there would be some, there's a lot of good error logging potential here, I believe. So let's go ahead and talk through this one. Real quick, I had a question come in Q&A, which is a good one. When's the best time to start your error log? Yesterday. No, go ahead and start it ASAP. Yeah, if you've taken a diagnostic test, that's a great time to, kind of a great first source to get some problems to add into your error log, right? You want to add at first, maybe not every single problem that you missed, because that could seem overwhelming and that might be kind of a hurdle that you just can't get over at the beginning. But the easiest ones that you missed, right? You know, the easiest problems that you get wrong, those are going to hurt your score the most. So those are most pressing. So any relatively easy problems that you're missing, those are good to add to the error log. Any questions that took you just like far too long, even if you got them right, those are good to put in the error log. And maybe the takeaway is I won't spend this long when I see this type of question next time. So I would say, yeah, even if you've already been studying for, you know, months, get started on an error log. I will say the error log is the study tool, technique, strategy, whatever you want to call it, the resource that is kind of most used by our 700 plus scorers. Okay, like if you ask a bunch of people who score well, who study the GMAT, like what did you do that really helped? You know, one of the most common answers would be, oh, I used an error log to really keep myself honest. Okay, so I would say get started ASAP on that. Cool. All right, so kind of talk through this one more kind of top down. I'm not going to give away the answer quite yet, but let's take a look at some splits. Okay, so again, we've got this have versus has, right? What has emerged or what have emerged? What things or what thing? And so we need to take a look at what the subject is, right? Let's get rid of our modifiers, right? What is definitely not the subject? Well, of Stone Age people, right? Of is a preposition, so of Stone Age people doesn't count for our sentence core, right? So people have emerged. Yeah, I guess you could say like that in isolation. People have emerged from the cave, yeah, you know, or something like that. But people definitely haven't emerged from the examination of tools. All right, so let's keep going. As systematic hunters of large animals, right? These are all just modifiers describing ultimately the new image. Okay, and so really what we're looking for here is the new image. This is problematic for me because I'm colorblind. The new image has emerged from some stuff. All right, and so we'll use that to get rid of A and B. All right, so again, if you picked A or B, but I think no one picked B, but if you picked A, I'm gonna really hammer this one home. Okay, subject verb is a really important sentence correction concept. All right, so let's learn it now. Okay, spot a verb difference. Okay, great split to spot. And if you didn't see that difference, that's another takeaway, right? But if you spot a verb difference like this, really kind of reflect back and see what is the subject. Let's eliminate all the excess stuff from the sentence to isolate. Okay. All right. Let's see. As mere meat scavengers. Okay. That's an interesting phrase. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay. Mere scavengers of meat. Okay. Let's see. The new image of Stone Age people blah, 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 has emerged from examining tools. Okay, there's another kind of, if I don't want to handle the as mere meat scavengers versus mere scavengers of meat, I've said that sentence enough now that it like just means gibberish to me. But if I can't handle this split in blue, like let's bail on it and go find a different split. Let's look at this one over here, emerge from examining tools, emerge from the examination of tools, and figure out the difference there. Well, I don't think the new image emerged from the tools. Like think about what that means, that it came out of the tools, right? I don't think that's going to be very good, right? So even though maybe our brain can kind of smooth out the meaning of that phrase, like that's not what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to give these bad sentences a pass and be like, I know what you meant, right? You know, be ruthless. So C can't work because an image cannot emerge from tools. An image, though, can emerge from the examination of tools, like it arrives or it arises, excuse me, from examining stuff. Okay, and now we have to handle a different split. Let's go handle this one at the end, which includes and including. Ooh, here's comma which again. Germany includes 3 wooden spears. I don't think that's what I want here, all right? Again, comma which. If you picked D, think about how comma which functions. I don't think it functions super appropriately here, right? Think about it as that glue word, that peanut butter word that sticks what came before it to what comes after it. I'd much rather use including to kind of list the tools that were found in Germany. And I think that's, you know, really it. That's the only difference between D and E. And so the difference is how comma which is used, and the GMAT prep software has said this is not the way we like comma which to function here, okay? So, you know, more opportunities for takeaways. Again, if you missed it because of have versus has, that's probably, you know, one of those things you want to nip right now, okay? If you picked answer C, all right, I think we just kind of stumbled on the meaning of this yellow highlighted area, right? So you should always be reading sentences and sentence correction with attention to detail of meaning, all right? Because there are going to be some grammatically correct sentences that mean utter nonsense, and those are always going to be wrong on the GMAT, and I think C is kind of in that category, okay? And then answer D kind of misses on the comma which. Okay, sorry, we are kind of flying through some stuff here. Ooh, good question real quick about answer choice C and the word that. The word that, I guess, could be okay. I think it's the word that follows that that's actually more problematic. Ask yourself what includes. All right, what's the thing that, running out of colors, that includes 3 wooden spears? And if you think literally what it is, yeah, it's the tools, but say those words in order. The tools includes 3 wooden spears. Can't work, right? So again, here's another verb. What's the subject that goes with it? Tools. Tools includes doesn't work. Sorry. Wow, lots of questions coming in. These are good questions. I did have some quant problems to look at, but maybe we'll kind of run through those quickly. Does of meat need to be in parallel with of large animals? No, I don't know if it needs to, but it's nicer. So this is a good question here, and ultimately, Maddie, I think this is not something I would be extra comfortable tackling, which is nice because I didn't have to tackle it. But we've got this rather than marker, okay? So we want X rather than Y, all right? And the 2 pieces on either side should balance, right? They should be parallel with one another. So here's what I'm looking at. The new image of Stone Age people as X rather than Y. And I do think D&E is just kind of neater in its parallelism, right? Hunters of animals rather than scavengers of meat is more parallel. And, you know, maybe a person who felt more confident in that split would use that to pick D or E. As mere meat scavengers, like if I start my parallelism with as here, as systematic hunters of large animals rather than as mere meat scavengers, yeah, it's not as parallel, but I don't know if I would feel 100% confident in saying I'm going with D and E and C is out of here, okay? But this is another way you could eliminate A and B, okay? We're talking about the new image of these people as this type of people rather than these type of people, right? These types of people. And A and B do not start with people types, right? This is not parallel to systematic hunters. So that's another reason you can get rid of A and B if the have-has let you down. So again, multiple reasons why a lot of these sentences are wrong. Just find one that you feel good with. Okay, I did promise that we'd take a look at some quant stuff, so we should probably skip over to that. If I can't keep my promises, then who am I? Don't answer that. All right. Sorry, I just got to take a look at what page these are on. All right, we're going to do it like this. I've got 3 quant questions on one screen, and I want to give you 6 minutes to tackle it. All right, I want to give you 6 minutes to try tackling these 3 questions. GMAT rules, they're all going to be on the page at once, but once you leave the top question, you're not allowed to go revisit it until you're done with the 3rd question. Okay, so I'll give you 6 minutes for these, and then we'll kind of we'll probably go a little bit late, but we'll push through the discussion of them as well. So I think it's slide 8. Okay, here they are, 3 questions. So I'm going to give you 6 minutes. Okay, and you know, when you wrap it up, if you finish early, like try to solve these questions multiple ways if you can, or prove that you know the answer. I'll see you in 6 minutes. All right, that's been 3 minutes, so we're halfway through. Hopefully you're past the first question. All right, you got 1 minute left. 1 minute. All right, that was 6 minutes. So go ahead and tell me in chat, which of those 3 was the hardest? The first one, the second one, or the third one? Ooh, people not a fan of the third one. Cool. Then we will, and the second one. All right, we'll carve out some time. All right, we'll carve out some time for both of those. Let's take a look at the first one, okay? Let's talk through this one. The lengths of 2 sides of a triangle are 3 and 8. What are the possible lengths for the missing side? All right, if you just have no idea how to approach this one, you need to learn this rule, all right? It has to deal with side lengths of triangles. The longest side of a triangle must be less than the sum of the other 2. I'm still here. Sorry, I forgot about video. Okay. Yeah, the longest side of a triangle must be less than the sum of the other 2. Okay. If you think about it, like we know the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? Which means if you connect these points with a straight line, that has to be shorter than if you went this way, right? Or if you went this way. And so even if you get really close, stay really close to the line, that's still going to be a further distance. And so that's just visualizing this rule. The longest side must be less than the sum of the other 2. Or it just has to be. Okay. So the problem is we don't know what the longest side is, okay? Perhaps the longest side is, well, it can't be 3, perhaps it's 8, okay? Well, if the longest side is 8, and I don't know my third side, but I know this rule. What I know is 8 must be less than the sum of 3 plus the missing side. We'll call it x. And so what I'm saying here is I'll subtract 3 from both sides and say x has to be greater than 5. So 5 is out, and so our answers C and E. All right, that was if 8 was the largest side, but 8 might not be the longest side, right? We have to leave in play the option that the missing side is the longest side, right? And if that's the case, then the longest side, which is now x, the unknown, must be less than the sum of the other two, which is 3 plus 8. So x has to be less than 11, which means Roman numeral 3 is out, C a B, C a D, and we want answer A. Okay, so I think if you miss this problem, there's probably only one reason that you missed it, and it is this rule. The longest side must be less than the sum of the other two. And so if I were to add this onto my error log, all right, and this is a good one for error logging, okay. We'll just won't fill out the source and problem number here, but we will fill out the topic, which is triangle side length. Here. There we go. Too many programs open. Triangle side length. Why you got it wrong? Didn't know my side length rule or restriction. And why you'll get it right in the future, you put the rule here. And you maybe make it a different color so you know that it's always a rule, like it's a mathematical principle. And it's even different than kind of something you'll want to just remember as a good hint or something. But yeah, longest side less than sum of other two sides, always. Okay, cool. I also should talk about this column over here, right? If you get a problem wrong on one of these practice exams on official guide out of the books, come back to it, right? To see, after you've kind of spent some time learning it on the spot, do you remember what you learned a couple days later? So date to revisit, what is it, the 9th? I'm gonna come back here on Saturday and review this problem, all right? And this one, if I missed them both, okay? And then if you get them correct on Saturday, let's put another date a week out, just to double check that we still have it, okay? And so, you know, you can sort, you know, the column by date to see if there's any questions you're supposed to review this day or this weekend or something like that. It's just a good way to kind of organize. But you do want to revisit, right? Or else you won't prove that you've learned the lesson. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the second question here. All right, second question is, oh, no, that was it. Here it is, sorry. Jeremy's salary, 1/4 of Ashley's salary, Linda's salary, 3/5 of Jeremy's. And Ashley's is how many times the average of Jeremy and Linda's salary. Okay, couple ways to do this one, all right? And I will say we can do this algebraically, and I will challenge you to do so, okay? We probably just don't have time to do it right now. What you should recognize, if you kind of sputtered through the algebra and didn't feel super confident with your answer, is to recognize that, well, you don't know anyone's specific salaries in this problem, okay? And the question is looking for a kind of specific, or not a specific, just a general ratio or multiple of one person's salary to the other people's, all right? And when you have these relationships that don't depend on the specifics of any of the salaries, you have an opportunity to make the specifics whatever you want, so long as they follow the rules here. so we can just pick one person's salary as a starting point and use that to derive the other people's salaries. Okay, so let's figure out, let's see, whose salary should I start with? Whose salary should I choose as a starting point? And then use that to derive the other salaries. Okay, I've got an option for Jeremy equal to 80. Okay, and I'm just going to say we could do this with anyone, right? There's a bunch of equations in here. This will always work, but we're trying to facilitate this problem-solving process and not complicate it. So if I went with Jeremy is equal to 80, what's Linda's salary? Yes, Keith, you can do that. We're eventually going to get to that. That's a good question. Yeah, if I go with Jeremy as 80, then Linda's is 3/5 of that. Well, do some math, you'll find that Linda has to be 48. Do some other math, a little bit backwards maybe, and you'll find that Ashley has to be 320. You could compute the average of 80 and 48 and figure out how many times 320 is of that average, okay? But I would say it's probably easier to start with Ashley's value because, well, if you just kind of wrote out these first few sentences in math, you said Jeremy is equal to 1/4 of Ashley and Linda is equal to 3/5 of Jeremy in terms of their salaries, right? Knowing Ashley, it's pretty easy to derive Jeremy, right? Just take 1/4 of it. And then once you have Jeremy's value, you take 3/5 of that to get Linda. So yeah, I mean, it's okay. If Ashley were 80, yeah, maybe if Ashley were 80, then 1/4 of that is 20. So I could say Jeremy is 20. And I could say 3/5 of 20 is 12. So Linda is 12. What's the average of 20 and 12? It is 16. Then Ashley's salary is how many times that average? 80 is equal to something times 16, and then X would be 5. Yeah. You could actually simplify this down even more. You could choose even smaller numbers. I'll just go ahead and show it up here. And this is what Keith had suggested. You could just spot the ratio is if Ashley were 20, Jeremy is 5, and Linda is 3. And this has got to be in this ratio, 20 to 5 to 3. The average of 5 and 3 is 4, and 20 is clearly 5 times 4. I will show the algebra real quick, just because why not? I'm having a good time. And so here's what the algebra would look like. I would push you to try to solve these problems as many times as possible, or as many ways as possible. And so if you got this right, kind of choosing some numbers or using the ratio method, that's great. Now that you know that and you know the answer is E, can you get to E using the algebra, right? Try to push your algebra chops a little bit, while you have the time here. All right, so let's go ahead and, I should have kept those equations up here, but Jeremy is equal to 1/4 of Ashley, Linda is equal to 3/5 of Jeremy, and I want to know Ashley's salary is how many times the average of Jeremy's and Linda's. So the average is you add them, right, and divide by 2. Okay, so now I've got to get Jeremy. I have 3 variables, but I have 3 equations here, I guess, which is good news. Actually, I have 4 variables because I have X, but we're gonna work some magic here, and one of the variables is going to disappear. Let's see. Let's rewrite this. A is equal to X times, well, J is 1/4 of A, and L. Well, L is 3/5 of J, but that's 3/5 times, well, J is 1/4 of A, so I can just substitute that in there. And so I say L is 3/5 of 1/4 of A, that is 3/20 of A, which is why we had that ratio of 20 to 5 to 3. So I've got 1/4 of A is J, and L is, I guess, 3/20 of A. I got to add those and divide by 2. What's 1/4 plus 3/20? So I need to convert to common denominator. A fourth is 5/20. Good stuff over there. A fourth is 5/20. Jumping ahead here. And so 5/20 plus 3/20 is 8/20. So that'll be 8/20 over 2. 8/20 divided by 2, or 40% divided by 2 is 4/20, or 20%. So 8/20 divided by 2 is 4/20, simplifies to a fifth. And this should all have an A in it too. This is what happens here. And now you should be able to eliminate the A's. The A's go away, and you have 1 is equal to X times a fifth, and so X equals 5. Yeah, the algebra gets a little fuzzy. I think it's doable. Well, it's clearly doable. But I think it's good enough to, or it's easy enough that you should be able to push yourself through this. Okay. Yeah, one other thing I'll mention before I leave this problem forever is this problem is modeled off of a problem in the official guide. And so maybe you'll come across it and you'll have some ideas for it. But one thing you can do on problems like this is you could solve it, using nice numbers. We call this choosing smart numbers. Okay, we chose 80 for Ashley. That was a pretty good number. And you could use that to derive Jeremy and Linda's value. Okay. We could also do algebra. Okay. Being able to solve it lots of ways is really good. I'll also say that in problem-solving questions on the GMAT, the wrong answers are often tempting because you end up at one of them for a good reason, right? They're not just arbitrarily wrong. They're questions that have or answer choices that have been put in here because the test makers know that if you make one little mistake, you could end up at this answer, all right? So one thing to consider doing is to figure out like how one would arrive at these wrong answers, right? So if you put the variable X on the wrong side of the equation there, you would get a fifth, right? You said A times X is equal to a fifth A. Right? Relatively easy to do. But can you think of how you'd end up at D? Right? B is the flip of D, but could you think about how you'd end up at D? And Maddie, you're absolutely right. The algebra is tough to do in 2 minutes, right? And that 2 minutes, I didn't even include like reading the problem and kind of understanding all of it. Lots of little steps in there. Well, if you used your smart numbers, right? We chose Ashley. One of the options was Ashley was 20. And Jeremy became, yeah, TC, you got it. And Jeremy was 5. And Linda was 3. If you didn't take the average, but instead take the sum is 8. And 20 is 5/2 of 8. So if you took the sum, you'd get D. Yeah, so every word counts here. And then I'll leave it up to you to figure out how you'd end up at C. But C is not a random relationship here either. So C does play a role into this problem. Cool. All right, one more, and then we'll call it quits. I'm having fun. Hope you guys are too. All right. Oh, this question's terrifying. What does it even mean? What is this really asking you? Yes. Like, what would it mean for integer k to have a factor between 1 and k? Like, it's not just asking if p is a factor. They're saying, does it have a factor between 1 and k? Right, so let's take a look at this problem. Let's just kind of throw in a number, Here, we're gonna go ahead and hide these statements right now. Let's just go ahead and throw in a number here. Okay, let's just say k is 5. Does 5 have a factor p such that it's between 1 and 5? No, because 5 is prime, right? But does 15 have a factor p such that p is between 1 and 15? Well, yeah, it does. It actually has 2. It has 3. 3 is between 1 and 15, and it's a factor of 15. And 5 as well. And so really what this is asking you is, if there are factors, if there is a factor p between 1 and k, then k is not prime. But if there is not a factor p between 1 and k, then k is prime. So this is just a very confusing way of asking you, is k prime? Woo, yeah, that's mean, right? It's really, really mean. But recognize this language, right? Integer, factor, 1 and the number. Oh, these are all like codes that have to do with the definition of a prime number, right? Or what makes a number composite, right? So if you missed this problem or you read this question and got a little overwhelmed, your takeaway is to kind of do some understanding, come to terms with how this is asking, is k prime, right? It's got the buzzwords, right? Got to be an integer, talking about factors, somewhere other than 1 in itself, right? Okay. Another way to ask is k prime is, does integer k have only 2 factors? Which is basically the same as this, because 1 and k would be the 2 factors, and we're asking, is there another one, right? Is there p? Okay. So, is k prime? Let's take a look at these statements. Statement 1, k is greater than 4 factorial. I will tell you, you should know what 4 factorial is, okay? You don't need to know probably what 7 factorial is, or definitely not what 13 factorial is, but 4 factorial is 24. So knowing that k is greater than 24 is not going to be sufficient information, because k could be 25, in which case the answer is yes. P could be 5. But k could be 29, right? That's greater than 4 factorial or 24. The answer is no. And so clearly statement 1 doesn't, you know, restrain the values of k nearly enough. There's an infinite number of integers greater than 24, and some of them are prime, some of them are not. So statement 1 is not enough, and I can eliminate answers A and D. Ooh, what book is the factorials found in? I don't know. I mean, they talk about it in the probability combinatorics chapters, I believe. I'm not sure where else you can find it. But factorials, I mean, there's not much to know about them themselves. It's just multiplying all the integers from that number down to 1. And so like how the GMAT uses them is interesting. And so they might kind of show up in divisibility as well. Because here we are in a divisibility problem, and we have factorials coming out everywhere. So Brandon, maybe check that chapter and the number properties guide. Okay. All right, so let's look at statement 2. Okay, this one's intimidating because these are some gargantuan numbers. Does anyone know what 13 factorial is? If you do, why are you here? You should have my job, right? No one needs to know what 13 factorial is. Oh, hold on. Okay, just because you don't know what 13 factorial is doesn't mean that this isn't sufficient information, because as we're going to find out, statement 2 actually is sufficient. So let's think about what we know about 13 factorial. Okay. What do we know about 13 factorial? Other than it's a really big number and you don't need to know specifically what it is. but can you tell me any properties of it? Okay, so yes, its factors include 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 all the way through 13, right? So because you've multiplied all of those integers to get the 13 factorial, you should be able to divide by any one of those integers and get a whole number as your quotient, and that's the definition of a factor, okay? So 13 factorial has numbers 1 through 13 are factors. And like from this, you can learn like a bunch of other things. Like for example, if you know that 10 is a factor in 13 factorial, you know that this number ends in a 0, right? Because somewhere along the line, it got multiplied by a 10 and a 0 got stuck on the end of it. Can anyone tell me why 13 factorial ends in 2 zeros? Yeah, because there's also, not only have you multiplied by the integer 10, you've also multiplied separately by 5 and 2, which of course is another 10. So there's another 0 at the end of it. Okay. All right, so let's think about all the numbers that k could be here, all right? Like it could be 13 factorial plus 2, or 13 factorial plus 3, or 13 factorial plus 4. Let's go ahead and skip down to 13 factorial plus 10 for the time being, since we just talked about that. We just talked about knowing that 10 is in here. Tell me how you know that 13 factorial plus 10 is not prime. I'm going to tell you this is not prime. How do you know? Not prime because well, it's still got to end in a 0, right? And it already has, there's already a 10 in there, okay? So if 13 factorial is a multiple of 10, then when you add 10 to it, you preserve the multiple of 10-ness. Okay. Yeah. Here, you could just factor out. Oh, I don't want to type that out. 13 factorial is multiple of 10, and 10 is multiple of 10. There we go. And so, you know, if you have like a multiple of 5 and you add a 5 to it, you're at a new multiple of 5. You're at the next multiple of 5. Okay. Thanks, TC, for typing that out. Yeah, and that's really the logic for all of these, right? 13 factorial is a multiple of 2, right? Because you've multiplied by 2 and 4 and 6 and a bunch of other even numbers in there. And so when you add 2 to it, you've just gone to the next multiple of 2. Same thing with adding 3, right? 13 factorial is a multiple of 3. So when you add 3, you're just going to the next multiple of 3. And this actually goes all the way through 13 factorial plus 13. And so k could be any one of these. And they're all going to be non-prime numbers because they're all going to be divisible by at least this number that you've added on at the end. Okay. So if you miss this problem, right, a takeaway for this problem is to understand, one, what 13 factorial means, right? Maybe you see it and you say, oh, I'm supposed to think about what this number means, not what this number actually is, right? That's something to add to your error log. This is such a big number, I don't need to compute what it is. Like if the GMAT, like the GMAT is not here to test me on like if I know how to carry out like 13 multiplication problems, okay? It's here to test like how quick of a thinker you are and how quickly you recognize things, right? And you recognize 13 factorial as being a giant number you don't need to know specifically, but it has these special properties to it. And the properties are that, you know, all the numbers 1 through 13 are definitely factors. And as we talked about earlier, like 100 is a factor as well, because we know that 13 factorial ends in 2 zeros, right? So it's not only the numbers that are 1 through 13 that are factors, but there's a bunch of other ones too. Okay. If you understood that, right, if you knew what 13 factorial was, and like what its properties were, then maybe it's this next step, right? Can you explain why 13 plus 7 is not a prime number, right? Oh, well, 13 factorial already is a multiple of 7. When I add 7 more to it, I just get to the next highest multiple of 7. It's way up there. I don't really know what I would get when I divided it by 7, but I know I'd get an integer. Okay. All right, so one other way I'll ask you to, further think about this problem. Okay, I actually have a couple, I'll just erase everything here. I had a couple follow-up questions to some of these problems, okay? And so I'm just gonna show them on the screen real quick as things that you can think about, okay? So I think, was it question 10? Here's one to think about, okay? Another triangle side length problem. So if you're watching on the recording, you can pause it here. And if you're, watching live, you can screenshot this and think about it. And I believe X has to be between, so pause it here if you're watching on the recording and aren't done, has to be between 2 and 16. Okay. My follow-up question for this was to try to determine how all the wrong answers could be trap answers if you make a mistake. And then I had a follow-up here, which is to explain how you know that none of these, oh, sorry, Brandon, yeah, good question. The answer to that factorial problem was B. Sorry about that. I'll go back and just kind of double check in a second. But explain how you know that none of these values is prime, because none of them are. Okay, so back to what Brandon was asking about. Statement 1 we had crossed out as not being sufficient, and then statement 2 was, right? K, anywhere in this span is not going to be prime, so yes, it will have a factor of P. And so statement 2 by itself is enough, and that's answer B. Sorry about that, forgot to bring that one home. One more bonus question. And that would be, I could actually increase this number at the end here a little bit, and the answer still stays at B. And I want you to tell me, or I want you to think about how far I could increase this number such that statement 2 is still sufficient. I'll give you a moment to think about that. Ooh, I have an answer that came in. I'm gonna get back to you, Keith, right now. All right, and yeah, you can increase this number not through 13. 13 factorial plus 14 is also going to be a factor, or going to be a composite number, because 13 factorial has 2 times 7 in it, and 2 times 7 is of course 14. So 13 factorial is a multiple of 14. So if you added 14 to it, you are at another multiple of 14. Same with 15. 15 is just 3 times 5, and 3 times 5, 3 and 5 are both included in here. And 16 as well. So 13 factorial plus 16 is still going to be a composite number, right? 8 times 2, they're both in here. And so 13 factorial is a multiple of 16, and that means that if you add 16, you'll be another one. And then if you get to 13 factorial plus 17, that's when it breaks down. Once you add 17, 13 factorial is not a multiple of 17, and so when you add 17, you might not be at 1. Now, actually, maybe this was a poorly designed question on my part, because I actually don't know what 13 factorial is, and so it very well be that when you add 17, you get to another prime number, or another composite number. But I know you can increase this to 16 and have it still hold up. So maybe that wasn't completely fair. That's what happens when I make something up on the spot. All right, cool. Thanks for watching. I know we went a little bit late, but you know, it's all good over here. So thanks for watching. I'll stick around a little bit, see if you guys have any questions. I'll take a moment to fill out some more error log stuff if you care to watch that, and then I'll start closing things down. So if you have any questions, just hit me up in the chat box, and I'll see if I can circle around and answer this. A couple more error log things. Talk about the third quant question here. Oh, I am getting more chat things. All right, thanks so much, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. Keith, I mentioned that it kind of depends on where you start the parallelism marker. So give me a moment and I'll circle back around to that real quick, but it kind of depends. Keith's talking about the second sentence correction question with the meat scavengers, about parallelism with the word as. All right, cool. Keith, let me see if I can track that down. All right. Yeah, so yeah, the question is, do we want as systematic hunters of large animals to be parallel with as mere meat scavengers, right? And I would say it could be. Parallelism has some flexibility with it. Kind of depends on where you want to start, you know, the elements that have to be balanced. And I would say if you start the parallelism with as here, then yeah, you probably want to start it with another preposition like as over here. But that doesn't mean you have to begin the parallelism with as, right? It might be possible to just shift this, to shift it over one word, okay? The new image of Stone Age people as this rather than this. And that way I'm putting the as before the parallelism starts. And in that case, I might just want to start with nouns and not prepositions. So there's some flexibility there. And I think, I can't remember who brought it up. Someone brought it up. And I said, I actually wouldn't feel super comfortable making that call. I think I like D&E more, but just because I like the parallelism in D&E more, right? Nouns of nouns, nouns of nouns. Doesn't necessarily mean that C's parallelism is 100% wrong. You know, maybe C's parallelism is, you know, very, very wrong to some people. I just don't have like that sensitive an ear or an eye or a brain to that kind of level of parallelism. I mean, I like D and E more, but I'm not sure that I like them enough more to like completely rule out C. But I do think D and E are better. Yeah. The better split in C is this part. Yeah, you don't emerge from tools. So cool. Yeah, C is gone because of meaning, and then C is also gone. We said one other thing about C, and that is the verb at the end here, includes. Ask yourself what includes. I think it's the tools include, right? The tools include the spears. The tools don't include the spears, and so that's like a better reason to eliminate C. Like this is another big point in sentence correction. Like let's go for something like completely egregious, right? Tools includes is absolutely wrong. And as mere meat scavengers like might be wrong. Prefer to go with the absolutes there. Yeah, so maybe for you on this one, it's focusing on the most kind of clear-cut splits and not some like, borderline ones.